Good morning, good morning, good morning. Mm, good coffee this morning. Happy Friday to everybody. Or if you're watching the recording of this, happy whatever day it is for you. What's going on? Well, it looks like another lovely day here in the state of Maine, which is nice. We've gotten a string of spring-like weather after a really big storm that came up a little over a week ago. Or 2 weeks ago. Good morning. Nice to see you. Welcome, welcome. As always, you are most welcome. Um, so yeah, getting a nice string of weather, which is great. I love to be outdoors. I have yard cleanup work to do. After the big storm, we lost a lot of branches. There's still a lot of leaves on my lawn, that sort of thing. I've got some stuff to live out in the country, in the woods, really, but I live next door to a big farm, and we don't have trash pickup here. And being as rural as we are, and so people we have to bring your trash and all the stuff. We have a big what's called the transfer station, and there's recycling. It's all sorted and stuff, and they generally keep this big pile of wood that people bring in, and they burn it. They burn the wood that's not being recycled. And because of the storm that we had last time I was there, there was this immense pile of branches that people were hauling in, truckloads of branches from clearing their yards and their driveways and streets and all this stuff. Um, and I haven't seen them burn it, but that's going to be a big fire. It's gonna be a large one. I've had some, photos, like, after Christmas, people will, sometimes burn their trees there. I don't know if that's the best thing for the environment. I know there are places where they sink Christmas trees to provide habitats for fish and stuff, like, to shore up coral reefs and stuff, but good morning, good morning, good morning. Happy to see you. Hello, or if it's not morning where you are. Um, I'm gonna be going to be on TikTok this morning just because I can only go on TikTok on my phone, and I'm waiting for some texts and stuff to come through, so I don't want to like get distracted by that. So today I'm talking whole, which is a great word to say that. I don't know a lot of the Hawaiian language, but I think it's absolutely amazing, absolutely beautiful, and it's got that interesting what they call glottal stop, where you go like ho'oponopono, right? There's like that stop there when you have a little. Um, we put like an apostrophe in there when we transliterate it into English. Um, I'm going to talk about what that is. I'm going to give a little bit of history about where it comes from. I'm going to tell you how to do it. All the thing. Can you share how it was for you in the beginning of your shamanic initiation call? Yeah, absolutely. I will be happy to do that. It's not exactly the topic for today, but whatever. I'm flexible. I will talk about that. I will talk about my call to shamanism and what it was like in the initiation process. And it's not like there's one initiation either. Many years of initiations. Oh, you're so welcome. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. So anyway, I'm going to talk about Ho'oponopono. And what I'm talking about today is going to be a quite a modern version of Ho'oponopono. In fact, we know exactly when it was created. We know exactly who created it, but it does have roots in really ancient Hawaiian practice. And the person who invented it was a Hawaiian shaman, um, and plant healer. And so I'll talk about that. Talk about where it comes from. I'll teach you how to do it today, right here. I don't always do that sort of practical level teaching on these lives, but this is such a simple but incredibly powerful practice. And I'm going to talk about the concepts behind it, why I might let it work a little bit. In fact, I have notes, and I don't often have notes for these things, but because a lot of the terminology is Hawaiian language, and I apologize in advance. I may be mispronouncing everything, right? I don't speak Hawaiian at all. I know aloha and ukulele. Some people say ukulele. It's not ukulele. It's ukulele, um, or ukulele. It's ukulele. Um, I may be mispronouncing everything, but I'm going to do my best. Okay, I'm going to do my best to read this and pronounce it as best I can. And it's important, like the Hawaiian terms are actually important. The language is important in understanding what the meaning is behind that. So, I'd be curious if people have heard of Ho'oponopono or know what it is. It's become very popular in the past, I don't know, 10 years or so, maybe even a little bit longer than that. So let me back it up a little bit and talk about the origins, the roots of Ho'oponopono, where it comes from. Well, we know it comes from Hawaii, right? It's a Hawaiian word. The word Ho'oponopono roughly translates into bringing things back into balance or reconciling or making things right. Now, the traditional ancient Ho'oponopono practice is like a form of mediation. You have two aggrieved parties, they would come together, and there would be a kahuna or an elder who reconcile to make peace. And I find this really interesting. And I spent a lot of time in the Philippines many years ago, and um, there this is not a thing in a lot of Western culture, but in a lot of Eastern culture that comes out of the Pacific, especially, um, there is a strong value placed on reconciliation, on making things right, on bringing harmony back to a community when there's been a disruption or disharmony. Right, harmony is valued, um, and that seems to be a really strong cultural thing. And so like in the Philippines, you have you have your regions, and then you have your city or your town that you live in. And then the towns are divided up into barangay. Barangay is like neighborhood kind of thing, right? And the barangay is really important. You tend to be very close with the people in your barangay, and you have to be. You live close to them. If there's disharmony, it can disrupt everybody's life. The same thing happens in the U.S. It's just we don't do anything about it, right? We settle everything in court. You put your fence on my side of the lawn, my side of the yard, I'm going to sue the crap out of you. That's how we settle things in the US. But in a lot of these cultures, like making things harmonious is seen as more important than making things right. And so like each town has a mayor, but each barangay has a barangay captain, and that is the person in charge of the barangay. And a big part of their responsibility is maintaining cohesion, maintaining peace, maintaining harmony. And in fact, they will have a budget. If two aggrieved parties come in, you put your fence on my property. Um, they might actually issue funds to somebody to help keep the peace. Imagine the government of, I don't know where people are. Some people are not in the US who are watching this, but I can't imagine my local government saying, "Oh, okay, Bob, you put your fence on Joe's yard by 10 feet. We're just going to hand him $100,000. Now go off and be friends again. We're going to make this right and go off and be friends." But they will do something akin to that. They will strive to make things right. And so it's the same with Ho'oponopono in its ancient roots, in the roots that it comes from. Um, Come to 1976, And there is a woman who is a Hawaiian shaman, a kahuna, who specializes in plant healing, so using herbs, plants for healing. And in Hawaii, the kahuna there have specialties, right? So the kahuna is a word that we translate to shaman, but it is, that is not exactly it. But she was a kahuna who specialized in plant healing. Her name, and I'm going to read this so I don't pronounce or try not to mispronounce it, is Morna Simeona. Morna Simeona started this process of ho'oponopono as an individual practice, a practice that one people or group of people can use without you know without a mediator. Um, doesn't that make people take advantage of this, saying the government will fix it anyways? Like that is definitely a Western view of what they do, but that is not how it works. That's not how it works out. Um, and it's not just like, hey, we're gonna go get some money from the government. It doesn't quite work that way. There are processes in place, but that's definitely the Western view is to distrust people's motives and to not think that harmony is important in a community, or as important as nobody's going to put one over on me kind of thing. So recently spent time in court as a victim of some bad crimes, and it really stood out to me. Our whole justice system is about punishment. Yep. And basically ignores helping the victim. Yep. So we don't rehabilitate people in the US anyway. Definitely don't rehabilitate people, and we don't take care of victims. There are some places that have victim outreach, but it is very limited. We don't care, and the reason for that is that punishing people, the US has more people in prison than the entire rest of the world combined. We have more people in prison than China. We have more people in prison than Russia. We have more people in prison than India. And we don't have the same, we have a third of the population. 25% of incarcerated people are in the US. Is it that people from the United States are bigger criminals or whatever? No, it's that prisons are highly profitable and they're often used for slave labor, and so it is about putting people away. People talk in the U.S. about the school to prison pipeline, right? Which absolutely exists. Once somebody enters the system, very difficult to get out of the system, right? Once you're a felon, good luck getting a job, right? If you don't have a job, if you're a felon and you don't have a job when you get out of prison, what are you going to do? Well, you're probably going to go rob some people, right? Recidivism is huge in the United States. Um, Violent crime is huge in the United States. We have a really I don't want to go too far down this. It's not even political. It's not a political thing at all. It's not a right or a left thing. Nobody is fixing this problem. Nobody. Right? And so we have a higher crime rate than a lot of other similar countries with similar economies and things like that. Um, so anyway, yes. Yeah, it's definitely interesting seeing how other cultures settle disputes and seeing how, like, is looking at something about prisons in Scandinavia, like Norway and things like that, and you look at them and they're like, oh, that's nice. Why would and people I've heard people say this. Why would we give prisoners nice things? They gave up their rights, because when we don't treat people like human beings, when we incarcerate somebody who's addicted to drugs, when we and take away all of their support systems and put them in a hellhole where they're victimized again, what happens when they get out, right? There's a reason there's a movie about, kind of about this, called Animal Factory. It's an animal factory. We take away people's humanity and then we send them back out and go, hey, why is this guy committing crimes again? Didn't he learn his lesson? No, what he learned was he was traumatized. So anyway, not to talk too much about the problems with the so-called justice system in the West. And I've had, run-ins not on the criminal law side, but somebody basically years ago, uh, a lawyer participated in a fraud against me and my business, and we're like, well, we're gonna sue everybody, including this lawyer who participated in the fraud. And they're very clear guidelines, like when a lawyer participates in fraud, they can be sued. And a judge who was going on vacation and didn't want to handle it just said, dismissed with prejudice, meaning we it's prejudged, you're done. No, no finding in law. What's judges can do whatever they want, and good luck getting stuff overturned. And we spent years working on this case and never got any relief. So anyway, I have some experience, and my apologies that you were experienced some serious crime and had firsthand experience of how we don't take care of the victims in this country, because it's not about that. It's about punishment, because punishment is profitable and has been for a very long time. Um, Check out the case of read up on Damien Eccles, who got released not that long ago, a few years ago, who was wrongly imprisoned for murder. There was no evidence to convict him whatsoever. In fact, it's very clear that somebody else did it. He's been trying to clear his name, but he was sent to prison he was on death row for like 30 years or something like that, from the age of 19. And stuff like, the guards, knocking his teeth out, and he can't go to the dentist because that, even though you're in prison, you can't earn money. You know, it is horrific. And we look down on other countries that do the same things, like, oh, isn't look how bad prisons in China are, or whatever. If we knew what went on, and we knew how things were, um more, I don't know why. I mean, and we kind of do, but I don't know why we stand for it. Anyway, I don't want to go too far down that path. I'm going to do some ho'oponopono on that. So, Morna Simeona came up with this technique for using ho'oponopono with yourself without any mediator. And she announced this and taught it in 1980 at a gathering of kahuna or Hawaiian healers or whatever. Her most famous student who has popularized this practice is a man called, I'm gonna I may slaughter his Hawaiian name, and my apologies for that. Dr. Ihaleakala Hew Len. So most people just know him as Dr. Hew Len or Dr. Len. Dr. Len is a clinical psychologist. He studied with Morna Simeona, and he worked on a ward of the Hawaiian State Hospital that housed people who were criminally insane. And he did not, interestingly, he did not ever see any patients face to face. He said, bring me all of their files. And he would go through their files every day and just do this ho'oponopono process, which is a psychological, spiritual process of releasing and letting go and taking radical accountability for things. And people were recovering, people were getting better, people were being let go of, of out of the hospital, being released. It's a powerful thing. It's a very powerful thing. I have used it a lot myself. Not for that, but I'm not a psychologist. And the process is drop dead simple, but a little bit of understanding actually helps it along. So if you're not familiar, ho'oponopono consists of saying, there are 4 phrases that you say, and you can say them out loud, or you can say them silently to yourself. You can say them alone. You can say them as part of a group. There is a Ho'oponopono song out there. You can find it, I'm sure, on Spotify or however else you get music online. Um, but those phrases are the following, and I'm going to explain how they work and who you're saying them to. You're saying them to yourself, but you're saying them to a part of yourself. Um, so the phrases are this: I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, and I love you. Now, when I first read about this and saw videos on this, oh, happy Friday, everyone listening while working. I hope you have a lovely work day, and I hope everybody has a lovely Friday. So my dog's barking for some reason. Um, I think there's a lot of activity going on the farm right now next door because it's springtime, and so they're planting. So there's it's a commercial farm, but there's like trucks and all kinds of stuff that come in and out. Um, no longer it used to be a family farm, but now it's like a big commercial farm owned by a large, actually nonprofit corporation. Um, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Now, the thing that, and if you're just starting out, that's kind of the order that you want to use. But, as you move along, you may decide to mix up the order of these phrases, and that's fine too. Whatever strikes you, whatever, however it works. Um, why? Why are we saying these phrases and how do they work? So the model, the philosophy behind how Ho'oponopono works is that something comes into our experience that um, causes pain, we don't like, is traumatic, or whatever, even if it's not happening to us directly. I see a tsunami happening on the news, or hear a client telling me about some trauma or something. It is still coming into my experience. Something about me this is the philosophy behind it, believe it or not. You don't have to adopt this philosophy if you don't like it, but this is the philosophy behind it. Something about me, something in my unconscious mind has brought this into my experience for a purpose, right? And that purpose is to clear on it. And what are we clearing? So it's clearing or cleaning. Dr. Len calls this repeating these phrases over and again. He refers to it as cleaning, I believe, either cleaning or clearing. It doesn't, that terminology doesn't matter all that much. So in the Hawaiian system of Huna, there are three selves, right? This is like the multi-part soul model that we see in um, from the Norse, from the Egyptians, from other cultures, from Kabbalah, from many, many other systems. Is sort of divide the self up into these three beings. So the three selves are the uhane. The uhane is your conscious mind. It's what you're aware of in this moment, right? And I think we could all agree that there is a conscious mind. Um, Underneath that is the unihipili. Maybe pronouncing that incorrectly. Unihipili or unihi. Yeah, that's the way I can pronounce it. That's the way my mouth will make that sound. I may be slaughtering that. Unihipili. That is the lower self or the subconscious or unconscious part of ourselves. That contains our memories, it contains our emotions, it contains our intuition, our impulses. Okay. So that part of us is mostly unconscious. You might say, well, I'm conscious of my memories. Well, not exactly. You are when they come up. But if I were to ask you what color is your mailbox, undoubtedly you would remember that, I would think. Maybe not, or what color is your refrigerator, or whatever. You would remember that. It would come up into your conscious mind really easily. But where was it before that? Right? You weren't thinking about it before that. It was locked away somewhere that you weren't conscious about. And so this is part of the idea behind Ho'oponopono is that we have these parts that are kind of locked away, and they're rising up into our awareness. They're rising into our consciousness. These memories or impulses or feelings, emotions that rise up, and we can become healthier. We can resolve things better, easier within ourselves, and actually resolve what appear to be external circumstances through Ho'oponopono. I'll talk about that a little bit too. So we have this conscious self, right, that we're aware of. We have this unconscious self, which is actually the larger part, larger, much unconscious part is much, much larger. We can only hold a few bits of information in our consciousness at any given time. But everything we have ever experienced and more is locked away down here, right? Um, for example, I talked about thinking about remembering what your your mailbox or your refrigerator, what color that is. Mine's white, by the way. My refrigerator is a yellowish color, but my mailbox is white. Um, so right now, you may not be consciously aware of your right big toe until I mention it, and then you're probably aware of it, right? And where it's resting and what it's, if you're wearing shoes, how those feel, if you're not wearing shoes, how the air feels, the temperature, whatever. You weren't aware of it till you consciously paid attention to it, right? Normally. And so, but as soon as you shift, you're aware of it. But if you banged your big toe, you would suddenly become conscious of it. Your unconscious, the unconscious part of you is aware of everything that's going on, right? Everything that's going on that your body can perceive and more, right? Millions of bits of information a second are coming into your nervous system, but you can only consciously pay attention to about 7 to 9 of those at any given time. So your unconscious mind, in part, places filters. There's a part of your unconscious that says, you don't need to pay attention to this right now. It's not that important, right? So, have you ever? So, my first name is John, and that is, at least amongst my generation, was a very common name. I can't even tell you how many Johns I went to school. Johns, Jasons, and Jennifers. J was a very popular beginning initial when I was born. I went to school with a lot of guys named John. John's a very common name. At one time, it was the most common male name in the English language. So a lot of Johns. So I have had the experience of being in a crowded restaurant and hearing my name, hearing somebody say my name. And all of a sudden it draws my attention. And then I realize they're not talking to me. And I go back to the conversation I have with somebody. Now, some part of me, like, I'm not consciously paying attention to every conversation in the room. I couldn't. It would be impossible. It would just be like noise and completely overwhelming. Some part of me is paying attention, is sorting through all of the stimuli coming into my system and telling me, oh, pay attention to this over here. Somebody just said something and that might be important. And what's more important than your name? It might be somebody coming in to say, hey, John, to punch me in the nose, or hey, John, to hand me some money, or hey, John, to, just to say hi. But that's important. But they weren't talking to me. So have had that experience a lot, or been in a mall, a crowded mall, and hear somebody say my name. That has happened a lot in my life. And I'm not listening to everybody in the mall or everybody in a restaurant or whatever consciously. You can't. So you have an unconscious. Part of its function is to filter what's coming into your consciousness to help direct your attention. Now you can consciously direct your attention, right? This is here's a secret. It's not really that big a secret. This is how a lot of hypnosis works. All hypnosis is self-hypnosis. If you don't want to be hypnotized, nobody can hypnotize you. You sit down, hypnosis, waving a watch in front of you, and you just say, I'm not going to pay attention to this person. You are not going to go into a trance. There's a there is cooperation that happens. And part of what they're doing is directing your focus. Frequently, what's happening is they're directing your focus to become narrower and narrower and narrower. The whole people don't really do the wave the watch thing, but it's called eye fixation. So they might have you look at a point in the ceiling and stare there for a second. So you're not so your attention isn't wandering around, and then you can alter your consciousness that way. So, so the unconscious stores all this stuff until it's ready to project it. And so part of the concept of Ho'oponopono is that something is coming into your unconscious is like serving up some stuff for you to take care of. And how do we take care of it? Well, we take care of it with these phrases. Who are these phrases addressed to? Who am I saying I'm sorry to? Because I experienced some sadness or I experienced some anger. And I talked the other day about using this process. I'll talk about it again today in case anybody wasn't on the other day. I've talked about using this process recently with some anger that I was experiencing. I don't like to be angry at people. I don't think it's some people seem to enjoy that, but I find it to be a really unpleasant feeling, and so I don't love it. It comes up as and not to say like our emotions. This isn't about burying your emotions or pushing them away or judging them, even, right? Because part of these phrases is thank you for bringing that to my attention. So we are addressing these phrases to our higher self. So again, there's the three selves. We have the uhane, which is the conscious mind, the unihipili, which is the unconscious mind. And then there's this concept of the what's called the aumakua, aumakua, aumakua. Aumakua is the higher self. Some people might say the super conscious. This is the part of us that is connected to divinity and also connected to the cosmos, right? And so we are addressing things. So um, I'm sorry is saying, oh, I'm sorry that I have this thing in my experience, that there's some memory or some experience in me that is creating these circumstances. Please forgive me. That means please forgive myself, right? Please forgive myself for having these feelings or these experiences come up. Please forgive myself, but please forgive me is what we're doing. I'm not saying this to you or another person necessarily, although it can be used that way, but this is something I'm doing on my own. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm feeling some anger. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Thank you for allowing me to forgive myself. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to clear this, to clear the emotional charge from this that is causing me some pain. And I love you, which is directed, I love myself, I love everyone else, right? Love is the way. Love is, I tell people that shamanism is my preferred form of spirituality. But my religion is love, if I have a religion. There's no dogma or doctrine to that. It is love. It means that I aim to show up in a loving way as much as possible, you know. So I'll talk a little bit about how I personally have used this recently. And I promise that I am going to go back and talk about um, my shamanic initiation and how it was from the beginning of my call to shamanism, because I promised I would. And I'm happy to talk. I'm happy to talk about that. And by the way, I had a great. This is an aside. This is my ADHD kicking in. Um, I had a great conversation last night with the reverend of a local Unity church. And if you don't know that, Unity is a metaphysical church. It's definitely part of the New Thought thing. They are not completely outwardly Christian. In fact, they welcome lots of other practices. In fact, I was talking to this reverend last night, and she was telling me that they were having a Sufi retreat at the church. And so it looks like they want me to teach shamanism at their church. And this is really fascinating to me and interesting to me. And I just love the idea. I love talking about shamanism. So, you know how it is if you love something and you love to talk about it, and you almost can't stop talking about it. And that's part of why I do these things. Um, uh, but what an amazing, great opportunity for me to connect with them and have a place to teach. I haven't taught a live class in shamanism, and I mean live and in person. I've taught live online classes, um, but I haven't taught an in-person class since before the pandemic because part of it is arranging the space is very difficult. So if I get to do this, and I might do multiple classes there, who knows? Who knows? We're going to work it all out. It'll happen maybe over the summer or fall. But what a great conversation. And that came in part about, it came about in part because I was doing a lot of clearing and also thinking about that I would really like to teach a live class sometime soon. And really this manifested for me. So Ho'oponopono, I promised to tie this in. Ho'oponopono can be used for manifestation because what happens is we get really, really clear on what we want. We let go of the emotional baggage surrounding this. There are ways to use this around money, for example. A lot of people, including myself, carry a lot of baggage around money. And the way that you use this around that or anything else that you want more of in your life is you really go into your feelings about this. When you think about, we'll use money as a great example. Most people have that. Most people have wounds about money. Um, if you don't, you're probably a billionaire. And even then, maybe not. I don't know. But with wounds about money, we learn things like money is the root of all evil, and that's not the actual quote, but it's the love of money is the root of all evil. A lot of, again, a little bit of an aside, a lot of what the Bible says about money and wealthy people and, that sort of thing, that sort of says money's bad, money's evil, is not talking about having wealth or m- having money or that, wanting to be able to have a nice life or anything like that um, is bad or evil. It's talking about greed specifically. You go back to a lot of the original meanings. Um, even the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah has been, they've made it into this whole thing against people being gay. Um, but in lots of places in the Bible where they talk about that, they're talking about, they say that, their biggest sin was that they weren't charitable enough. They were greedy. But also the sexual immorality that they were talking about in the Bible is non-consensual sex. Send these people out so we can have sex with them. Um, what's the definition of greed? I would say the definition of greed is um, is attachment to money. It's like this grasping need and this hoarding and this lack. In the Bible, it's very much about lack of being charitable, lack of taking care of the poor, right? I've got all these resources, but I'm letting people suffer around me. I'm not sure. I'm just hoarding wealth and not taking care of people. There were, and that, you can adopt. You don't have to adopt that definition of greed, but that's very specifically what is being talked about in these places. So um but so we don't have to have a wound around money, and you can be prosperous and you can still be loving and you can still, I know I have met a couple of actual billionaires in my life. I've worked for one of them, and uh, just kind of been associated with another one. And these are not, neither one of them would you read their name in Forbes or in any, they did never sought name recognition or anything. They're not famous. One of them was a little bit famous just because of the business he was in. But uh, this one guy I know only because talking to people that I worked with, they're like, this guy has transformed the city I lived in, has transformed it through charitable giving and put his name on nothing, right? So all of this stuff, this whole the city, like really rundown parts of the city were like completely revamped and lots of public art put in, and lots of really great things happened that this guy was doing not because he wanted recognition for it, but just because he thought it was the right thing to do and he loved the city, and um he did it out of love, right? And so again, you can be wealthy and you can be abundant without being greedy, but very often we mix those up and we're taught the wrong things. Don't be greedy. um so we can do this, we can do cleaning about anything that we want more of, right? And we do that by, what are your feelings about money? What are your, what are your beliefs about money and having money? You believe, oh, it doesn't come easily, and all of these little stupid little phrases that people throw out, like money is the root of all evil, or which is not a stupid phrase. It's just not the complete phrase, right? Um, I was in a play in high school. I was in Little Abner and sang the song "Money is the root of all evil." Um, uh, what is your, you're feeling I never have enough, or whatever your feelings are. You bring them up and you do Ho'oponopono. You say, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And you say it over and over again. And what happens if you're doing it and you're doing it with feeling is that the feeling starts to dissolve, it starts to lighten, it starts to go away. And that unconscious stuff frequently is what holds us back from being, doing, and having everything we want. So we can use this clearing on everything. So as promised, I'm going to talk a little bit about my call to shamanism and how that happened. I'm gonna stoke the fires of my memory back here, since it was a while ago. So I went, like many people who go into shamanism, is a very common path in, it's not universal, but it is very common. I was in the middle of a crisis. I was in the middle of a health and mental health crisis, and I was doing everything I possibly could to get better, and nothing was working. Um, I was seeing doctors. I'd lost something like 60 pounds. I was too thin, not sleeping, not able to eat. I would, apologize for this in the morning, but I would throw up anytime I tried to eat and have horrible stomach pains, and um, you know, was unable to sleep sometimes for 3 or 4 days at a time. If you've ever gone without sleep for, longer than 36, 48 hours, um, you'll understand what that does to you mentally and physically. Um, I was in rough shape. I was in really bad shape, but I was doing all kinds of things. And I was seeing doctors. I was seeing a naturopath. I got acupuncture. I was meditating. I'd been meditating my whole life at that point. Um, and one day I was meditating. I was sitting at a little dojo in my basement, and I was sitting on my cushion and meditating. Just, I don't even remember what type of meditation I was doing. And I heard a voice that sounded like somebody was standing. Sounded a male voice, very forceful, very authoritative. And to this day, I don't know if it was real or made up in my brain or whatever, but I heard a voice that sounded like it was coming from outside of me that said, "You need to learn shamanism, not you need to go to a shaman for healing. You need to learn shamanism." And my, you know, it I popped out of my meditation. There was nobody standing there. And I thought to myself, how is that going to happen? Like I didn't know anything about shamanism. I mean, I knew the word. I knew basically what, I had a probably a lot of misconceptions about what shamanism was and shamans were. Um just because I only knew from what I saw on TV and stuff. I had no idea. And I live in Maine in the US, which, if you're not from the US, is in the far northeast. It's one of the least densely populated states in the country. Um, Small state, 1.5 million people um, in the entire state. There are many cities in the US that have more population than our entire state. And so I thought to myself, how am I going to learn shamanism and why and what is it? And I don't live in Peru. I don't live in Mongolia or Siberia. I can't travel to Mongolia. I've got a job, I've got a family. And I did a little bit of research. I used the is a powerful spiritual tool called Google, and I looked up, learning shamanism in Maine or something like that. And interestingly, I found that there is a rather large and vibrant community of shamanic practitioners in Maine and shamanic teachers. There are a couple of fairly well-known teachers here, including my teacher, who's no longer teaching, unfortunately, but she's not unfortunately. I mean, we miss her as a teacher, but she's retired. She still sees clients and stuff, but teaching is hard. Teaching's hard work. Teaching shamanism is incredibly hard work. Um, and particularly the way she was teaching in a format which was oftentimes involved like arranging accommodations for students to stay together and stuff like that. So I contacted my teacher and I said, I found out some info, and she was offering an apprenticeship at that time. It was an apprenticeship coming up. And I said, I got this message that I need to learn shamanism and I want to be in your apprenticeship. And I didn't know that that was like kind of ridiculous, right? Not having come from zero background in shamanism. And she's like, well, you know, we talked back and forth. We talked on the phone. We played a little phone tag, talked back and forth a little bit. And eventually we got down to it. She said, well, normally there are some prerequisites to going, to entering into an apprenticeship with me, and you've missed them, and you've missed your last opportunity to do them. And I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe this isn't for me. She said, but if you come meet with me in my office and spend some time, maybe we can figure something out. So I went and I spent several hours with her actually, and talked about what I was going through, talked about my spiritual experience. And for whatever reason, she said, okay, I will let you into my apprenticeship. But here's the deal. You've got to do all of this prerequisite work. Okay, I'll do it. Whatever. I'm a jump in with both feet kind of guy. So I jumped in and I started with a year-long apprenticeship. My very first day of training, I almost quit that day because I was completely emotionally overwhelmed. So, but I went back, I went back and completed that and really found my home in shamanism. And over time, my health just improved. It just got better. Both my mental and physical health got better. And, I wound up doing a year-long apprenticeship, studying how to teach intro to shamanism, studying soul retrieval, studying things like curse unraveling and depossession and wound healing, and then going into 2 years of initiatory training. And then after that, doing 2 years of teacher training. So I did, after my call, I ended up doing something like 7 years of training with my teacher and with other, I've done some other training with some other teachers. And I will continue to train. I will always be learning because shamanism is a very broad and very deep topic. You can go learn a lot of things, and then you can come back and learn some things on a very, very deep level. Right now, my current interest is in Norse shamanism, and I'm studying. I'm spending 9 months studying and practicing Norse shamanism, including high seat save and some other practice and lots of other practices. I've studied Scandinavian folk magic, and it really speaks to me. Um, so that's been kind of a focus of mine as well. And in the meantime, I just completed an exam for to become a metaphysical minister. I don't have my exam results back, but I'm hoping, thinking I pass. And so stay tuned for what's going to come from that. So I can always continue to evolve spiritually, and over time, I have been through a lot of initiations, and in an initiation, in my viewpoint, a shamanic initiation, your life gets shaken up. Your life kind of gets blown apart a little bit. Um, so anyway, that is a little bit about my call to shamanism, and how I got into it, and a little bit about my studies and that sort of thing. So I hope that's helpful. I don't know if you have any questions about that, but um, mental struggles part of the call. They certainly can be. I would say, yeah. I mean, for me, it definitely was, and for many others. You know, s- there are cultures for whom things that we consider psychosis in the West are signs of connection to spirit, and they have ways of working with it. The the oracle, I don't know if he's still alive, but the oracle for the Dalai Lama, who is shamanistic, uh, because in Tibet and Nepal, shamanism is mixed in with Buddhism and Bon. Um, those things are not separable. Um, so the there's a story about the oracle for the Dalai Lama, who actually warned him that the Chinese were about to capture him, and he needed to flee into India back in the 50s. Um, was When he was a young man, he was suffering from probably what we would say is schizophrenia, and having all these hallucinations and stuff. And his parents took him to a monastery, and the monks took him in and taught him how to channel that and meditate and work with it. And he was considered a very holy spiritual being. Did you have times after the call where moving forward with it waned? Where maybe I lost motivation or something along those lines, I guess is what we're talking about. Uh it's hard to describe. I would say that there are times where my practice, like life gets in the way of my practice. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have not journeyed for myself in like 3 months. That's rare, but it happens. Um, but I have never lost, like, for me, and I am not saying that everybody that this happens to, like, the path is for them, the shamanic path is for them. Oh, well, yeah, definitely you can catch the replay. It'll be available YouTube and Facebook as well. Um, and so, okay, yes, that's what you mean. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so my interest and commitment to shamanism has never waned. My practice, I'm human, and my practice sometimes falls by the wayside, because I'm busy doing other things, working with clients or teaching students, writing. I'm in the middle of writing a book, and or I would say in the middle. I'm hopefully at the tail end of writing a book, and so, and I have a family, and I have relationships and friends, and just stuff happens. And then I'll be like, gosh, I haven't journeyed for myself in a really long time, or I haven't been practicing seth, or going out to my altar. I have an outdoor altar. I have indoor altar as well, but I haven't been making offerings, and I haven't. So yeah, I mean, my practice kind of wanes, but my commitment to this path has not ever waned. And for me, and again, shamanism is not a path for everybody. It just doesn't, it doesn't make sense for some people. And I don't proselytize. I'm not recommending necessarily shamanism for anybody unless you feel called to shamanism. If you feel called to shamanism and you learn to journey. And so for me, when I learned to journey and I started getting into it, I was really resistant in the beginning. I got to tell you, like, I was like, I don't want to do that. Oh, my teacher's making me do that. Oh, I don't want to do that. And then I would do whatever it was she wanted me to do. And I go, oh, this is amazing. This is awesome. You know, um, I don't know. It's like getting into a hot bath sometimes. You're like, ouch, ouch, ouch. And then you get in, and you're like, that's what going into shamanism was like for me. It felt like home. And back when I was in my apprenticeship, I was married at the time, and I would go off and do my apprenticeship work, and then come back. And there'd be times where I'd be like stressing out or whatever. And my wife at the time would go, I don't know what's going on over there, but you need to go back and spend more time with those people. Those people, right? You need to go back and spend more time with those people. So uh that's kind of cool. Felt called to go to Nepal this year. Actually went and was guided to visit special places. What's so special about it? What's so special about Nepal? I've never been to Nepal, but Nepal is what Tibet would be if Tibet hadn't been taken over by China. It is a place where spirituality is definitely a part of everyday life. Buddhism is combined with Bon, which is the native religion, and shamanism and Hinduism, and everything sort of confluences there. And there are, so spiritually, there are a lot of very sacred places there, lots of monasteries that haven't changed, unbroken lineage, more than 1,000 years old. So um there's a lot of specialness to Nepal in my and I have studied like this much Nepali shamanism. So oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yes, sometimes the universe puts you on pause until you're ready for next steps. Yeah, absolutely. I'm like a leaf in the wind. um, the universe put me on this path. The universe has lots of ideas for me. Spirit knows better than I do. That's always my assumption, that spirit knows better than I do. And people who study with me, people who study shamanism with me, when they're studying with me, I will tell them that if I tell you something and you're helping spirits tell you something different, go with them. They know more than I do. I'm just a guy. I've studied something for a long time, so I can pass on what I've studied. I can guide, and I'm a guide. Like, I will say, try this and you'll have some experience, and it will mean something to you or it won't. But I can't have the experience for you, and I can't make sense of it for you. And sometimes students will say, "Will you, I this happened during my journey. Like, what does this mean?" And I'll say, I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna interpret that for you. And that's not tough love. That is just love. I want you to interpret that for yourself. I want you to do the work and realize that you don't need me. You don't need me to interpret your journeys for you. You don't need me to interpret omens for you. You don't need me to. It's different with clients. Clients are not necessarily learning the processes to be able to do this. And so I will do, dream interpretation or omen interpretation or, things like that. I'll do divination for clients. I don't do divination for students, generally speaking. There's some very rare exceptions to that, but so people who study shamanism with me, shamanism is a path of personal revelation, meaning I'm going to help you learn to get your own answers, but I'm not going to give you the answers. And I'm not your guru. You don't bow down to me. We are equals. I just know some things that I've studied that I can pass on to you that, you might not have learned before. But you're going to have experiences that are different than mine, that surpass mine. You're going to have helping spirits that aren't my helping spirits. They're going to tell you different ways to do things. You might invent new ways to do things. I have had stuff, my teacher has had stuff come up. Her teachers has had stuff come up. I have had things come up. My students have had things come up that nobody taught us other than spirit. And that's valid. And shamanism, personal gnosis is valid, right? Once you get to a certain point and you learn to trust in spirit, trust in your helping spirits. So with that, I've been yakking for an hour. I'm gonna run and start the rest of my day. Have a fantastic weekend, my friends. Have a lovely weekend. Um, Enjoy yourselves, be safe, be sane, be happy. I try to say this more and more because I'm really making a commitment to coming from a place of love. I love you all. I do. I love you whether I've met you or not. I love you. I hold you in full acceptance. I hold you in love, and we all need more love, not less. Do your best to love yourselves as well. If I can love you and I don't even know you, you can love yourself, right? Right? Um, you're so welcome. I'm happy to come on here. I'm trying to do these a little bit more frequently. So I used to try to do them once a week, and now I'm doing them multiple times a week. So, um, yeah, and there's more stuff to come. There's more different stuff to come. Oh, you're so welcome. I'm happy to pass on things that I learn. It makes me excited, like things that I love and I enjoy that I've learned. It makes me very happy to share them. You are so welcome. You're so welcome. It's nice to see everybody again. And I do have, if you're interested, and some of the people on this have actually been in my previous class that started in February and maybe, participating in my April class again. I have a class coming up at the end of April in energy body alchemy, and it's a really powerful class. You can check it out from my website if you're really interested in finding out more. And if you decide it's for you, I've tried to make it really, really affordable. It's a 4-week class, and it's live videos. Live, I mean, like over Zoom, like where we actually meet once a week, and there's daily emails with lessons, exercises, and meditations, and a really amazing Facebook group that has been going since the last class. So you actually get to chat with and interact with the students from previous cohorts, and that by far, to me anyway, has been a really, really powerful, beautiful. You never know how like a Facebook group is going to turn out, but the students from my previous cohort were just amazing and absolutely loving and sharing and open and interacting with each other, and um, it continues to go on. So there's an opportunity to join in with them. So if you're interested, check it out on my website. That is my only pitch, other than have a great weekend and love yourselves as much as you possibly can. And I will